So Terrie, or Dr. Aamodt, as I've always known you, what brought you to Walla Walla? How did this all start here?
Well, it was kind of a whim, actually. In 1979, I came to Walla Walla for 1 year on a temporary assignment. The English department had a faculty member have to leave suddenly right at the beginning of the summer, and they didn't have time to search for a permanent faculty member. So they wanted someone who could come and teach some classes for a year while they did their search. I was working in Loma Linda University Medical Center at the time in development, and just kind of settling in there shortly after finishing my master's degree in English. I thought Walla Walla University was in a rainforest because my father was a native of Bellingham and my mother a native of Portland. So the only part of the Northwest I knew was going through their hometowns, and it was pretty wet and green. It was quite a surprise to find out that I was in a different part of the state that looked very different.
Do you have any particular memories of people or events that just kind of warms your heart when you think about it?
One of the things I really enjoyed that we did at the very beginning and have done sporadically since is faculty and staff retreats. Many of those were at Camp Miveden, and those were times when we could just everybody get together. It was a big highlight for the children of the faculty who got to get off school for a day or two, come up to Miveden maybe Thursday evening, take Friday off of school, and everyone was out enjoying the waterfront and just having a great time, letting somebody else do the cooking, and time to visit and make friends, and a way to connect with people outside of your own department, because we see each other in our own department a lot, but the chance to see people across the whole campus was really special.
That idea of community, do you think is that a part of this tradition here? Is that kind of in the blood, so to speak?
Well, that's something I feel we have a sense of community both as a faculty and staff and also as a student body, because we are a long way from big entertaining cities, and so we have to find ways to connect with each other, to look for things close by that are interesting to do, and there are many. And I think it does affect the community because we're here, we do a lot of things together.
Switching gears a little bit here, more focused on your career specifically. Well, what is it that makes you passionate about what you do?
Well, I love to read and write. And I was an English major and a history major as an undergraduate. Got a master's in English, which is when I came here. But while doing that, I got inspired to do more work in American studies, which is a combination of two disciplines, in my case, literature and history. And so after I had been here a couple of years, I got a study leave and went to Boston University to study American history and literature. To be able to do those things and to communicate them to others and to find a student, and there are quite a few of them who aren't particularly fond of history and maybe had some bad memories at some point of having to memorize too many dates or something, and just kind of pull them into the discipline and watch them light up and become interested. That's what warms my heart as a teacher, thinking about those occasions.
As a former student, it worked on me. Do you recall any particularly formative junctions in your career as you went along?
Well, I find that many of the things that I've happened onto in life came as what felt like happy accidents. Coming here in the first place was one of those. I was invited as a member of the English department to write the centennial history for Walla Walla University. And I knew it would be a big project. I wasn't exactly sure what it would entail, but I knew that it would ease the load for me to be able to do some of my load be research while I was living in Pullman for 2 years and commuting. That was kind of an adventure while my husband was in grad school. And so I thought, great, here's a research project I can work on that would be a part of my load. I think it was a third of my load for a couple of years. That gave me the opportunity to do a lot of primary research, to be able to talk to people who had been at Walla Walla College in 1919 when they had the fire. I talked to a gentleman who was nearly 100 years old and also a woman who was nearly 100 years old who had both been students here at that time. That was pretty amazing. I did about 50 oral history interviews with different folks who had been students or faculty here over a large spread of time, and delving in onto all kinds of documents, going to the General Conference archives and looking there, and working in Loma Linda University archives. And that gave me a real interest in historical research. And I didn't realize at the time that it would be part of that morphing process for me to work from the English side towards the history side. Started teaching history full-time in 2003.
Do you have any moments where you think of a student as and just really it was inspiring to you, or kind of shaped the way you think about what you do?
Well, again, talking about happy accidents, one day I was meandering through the maze of hallways in the old administration building when I was in the English department, and I came across one of my advisees who I had just met and didn't know very well. His name was Ben Cothra, and he was a double major, English and history, and so I kind of kept an eye on folks like that. And he was looking very lost. And he didn't have a job, he didn't know what to do next. And I said, well, come on down, I'll put you to work doing something. And usually we didn't hire too many freshmen. But to make a long story short, he worked for me every year. It took him 5 years to finish those 2 majors. And then to watch him launch into graduate school to eventually do a dissertation on jazz and photography, which was then published by the University of Chicago Press, and then to become a professor at Cal State University Northridge campus and be involved in a historical center there and all kinds of interesting things. And to watch him and many other students I've had launch themselves into their careers and really share the love of history and the love of the humanities with other people. That's what I've really enjoyed watching.
Just kind of touched on this, but what can you say about what takes place for students during their 4, 5, 6 years at Walla Walla University?
Well, they really become fully invested in their adult lives. When they come, they're straight out of high school. They are just now old enough to vote usually. And when you are old enough to vote, you start to see the world in a different way. And you see the world as an adult. You think about how you're going to relate to that world after you graduate. And you come with a lot of aptitudes and skills and abilities, but you really have to build on those while you're in the university so that you develop the critical thinking skills, the social skills, the specific knowledge base, no matter what discipline you're in or what major you're in, so that you can function in the larger world. And to watch that unfold is always an adventure, and it always feels new. I think that's why people like to teach, because it's always new.
Let's talk about struggles here on this campus. Were there moments of struggle that you can recall?
Well, Walla Walla College and then university is a tuition-driven school. It's dependent on steady enrollment, so sometimes when enrollment numbers go up and down, that creates struggles. When I first came here in 1979, we were experiencing nationally what we call stagflation, where we had a stagnant economy and inflation at the same time. So we had double-digit interest rates and double-digit annual inflation rates. That meant, that really wrought havoc for a tuition-driven school. It meant tuition went up rapidly, and interest rates being so high were difficult as well. And so they would have to borrow money to get through the summer payroll and would depend on the fall quarter tuition to kind of pay off what they had to borrow in the summer. So it was, we were on a kind of a delicate place there. But many, many improvements have happened since then, fortunately.
So that sounds like kind of a key moment in the university's history. Are there others that come to mind?
Well, I can think of several. Looking back on the way this school has developed, I would say the crucial first thing that happened to encourage its survival was when it became accredited in 1933. And at that time, it wasn't clear whether it would become a junior college or would it be allowed to continue as a senior college. And then the accreditation process actually went for a couple of years from 1933 to 1935, and it got its 4-year accreditation. Junior college in 1933, senior college 1935. That was a very important moment for the school, and it kind of set the tone with its president, William Landine, encouraging scholarship and encouraging serious intellectual activity, and really kind of set a tone that I think has stuck with this school ever since. And then I would think about World War II, as it was for so many campuses, the challenges that brought. So many young men entered the armed forces, and they saw the student body shrink by about half, and they had 2 to 3 female students for every male student on campus. They got down to close to 500 students during World War II. And then as the war ended, they watched the student body more than double in just a couple of years. They had a huge influx of temporary buildings, just trying to keep everything together and hiring more faculty as quickly as they could. It was a very dynamic period of growth, but also a very hectic time. Then I would say another important time as they were trying to settle into this new, larger footprint of the school was in the 1960s, when the North Pacific Union said to the school, we don't think you need an endowment because we will be your endowment and we will set up a building fund. And so there was a building boom throughout the 1960s, basically a new building every year. And you see them all over campus. Pretty much the ones built with tan bricks are those buildings. And that was excellent for as long as it lasted. But then, we eventually moved towards a more conventional kind of endowment program. Also, as that phase was kind of finishing off, when Robert Reynolds became the president and recruited a whole generation of dynamic young faculty members who were the core of the institution and made it a really strong school, that's when they began to talk about achieving university status. So that was an important time. And I would also look at the last few years that we have seen on campus where there has been a significant improvement in the physical appearance of the campus, in the way the grounds are laid out, and some new building projects, and the total refurbishing of Bowers Hall, also cooperating with the City of College Place to transform College Avenue. And I think that sends a message as well. We really care about this place. We take good care of it. And I think that's an important message that we give to our community and the people who come to visit.
Back to classroom events, to student, maybe field trips. Are there events or moments from that kind of orient around the classroom?
Well, one of the times that I remember with great fondness was when we made our classroom essentially the whole state of Washington. In the science and arts class in the spring quarter, I think it was around 2010, happened to have a student named Christian Bell in that class and some other folks. We went up to Seattle and checked out, we were studying modern art. So we went to the Seattle Public Library, which was brand new then, the Ram Koolhaas building that is an incredible place. Also, we went to the sculpture garden and investigated that. Well, another thing we did while we were there is we went to the Burke Museum on the campus of the University of Washington and investigated a casting made of something called the Blue Lake Rhino Cave. And we saw the fossil bones that had been removed from the site of where that rhino was discovered in the 1930s. The next day, we were able to go to Central Washington to Blue Lake and to go on a long hike around the lake and up a big scree pile and investigate this cave made by molten lava, molten basalt that had formed around a dead rhino. And the shape of the rhino is still there. You can crawl inside. It's pretty amazing. Then we also went and investigated the Dry Falls region, talked about the Brett's floods and the Ice Age era floods that transformed the landscape of Central Washington and taught us all kinds of things. So we had science, we had art, and we were outdoors for 2 days. So it doesn't get any better than that.
We learned a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
We learned a lot. Walla Walla University, from the perspective of someone who's maybe never been to this community or experienced this school, how would you describe it to someone who just had no familiarity?
I would say you would visit a place that's in a vibrant, small community. It is a community that has the flavor of 3 different college campuses, college and university campuses, and also a lot of tradition, history. We study the history of the Whitman Mission and the settlement by people from the Oregon Trail in this region, the Native American presence here that continues to this day, and try to understand all of those layers of our history. So there are many, many interesting things to see here. And we're at the foot of the Blue Mountains. There's snow, there's places to play in summer and winter. It's pretty nice.
Thinking about Walla University as a institution of higher education that is rooted in a faith tradition, what does that mean for the school?
Well, I strongly believe that a place like Walla Walla University is a place where Seventh-day Adventist Christian values and a liberal education, and by that I mean liberal in the sense of the liberal arts, the mind being liberated and not oppressed. Those things fit together very well. The Adventist pioneer Ellen White talked about how education should help young people become thinkers and not reflectors of others' thoughts. And I believe that is exactly what a place like Walla Walla University needs to do. That to nourish a strong faith, a faith that is strong enough that it is not afraid of questions, it is not afraid of investigation. It has a powerful and deep source, a faith that understands the importance and the value of a Sabbath rest, a faith that understands the value of a spiritual experience in one's own life, something that you can't buy, you can't have someone put it on you for yourself, use something you develop through your own experience. And to be able to do that and also to follow the truth where it leads. That is something that I think this school does well.
Making it even a little more personal, what does it mean to you to be a part of that kind of academic faith community?
Well, sometimes I've talked with my fellow colleague, Tom Thompson, who I taught science and the arts with for 12 years, all 3 quarters. And we both talk about how transformative that was for us, because it forced us to look at things in a new way, to bring different fields together in ways we hadn't tried to do before, and to answer deep questions. I recall both of us lost our dads while we were teaching that class, and you're kind of dealing with some of the fundamental issues of the universe. It just makes you stop and think. It's a very, very reflective kind of experience. But we both, although it was terrifying at times to try to learn so many new things to put that class together, it was also very, very rewarding for us, both spiritually and intellectually.
So we have a long and rich history of significant figures on this campus. Is there anyone that comes to mind as being particularly an inspiration to you? Well,
my first experience actually with Walla Walla College was when I was a student missionary in Korea and bumped into Bob Reynolds, who I knew vaguely from New England days, and watched how he operated and how he connected with his students who were student missionaries there and how he talked about his school. And I said, wow, that's an amazing guy. And then I taught Sabbath school class that he sat in, and he came up to me afterward and said, Terrie, you're a born teacher. And I don't know if he really meant that or not, but I would have followed him to the ends of the earth, you know. So he was pretty amazing. Rick Emerson, my colleague for a number of years, who I watched him work in an interdisciplinary way so effectively. All of my colleagues in English and history that I've been able to associate with are just amazing people.
If you had the chance to say something to your former students, what would you like to tell them?
Have a lot of children and send them to Walla Walla University. And what I would actually tell them besides that, and probably before that, I'm so proud of everything you've done while you were students here and following your lives after college. It's amazing to see the places you've gone. And the thing that makes me happier than anything else is when you come back and say hi. So please do that and stay in touch.